New York residents caught in the crosshairs of a clash between their state and the Trump administration. The Department of Homeland Security is banning all New Yorkers from enrolling or re-enrolling in the fast-track travel program Global Entry. The move essentially is a retaliation over a new law that allows undocumented immigrants to obtain driver's licenses. The DHS listed Global Entry as just one of several trusted traveler programs that New Yorkers are no longer eligible for. With Global Entry, travelers can speed through borders and airport lines for 5 years after a thorough one-time background check. Another program, Sentry, is a similar one that lets qualified travelers re-enter the U.S. quicker after traveling to Canada and Mexico. Nexus is another one that expedites border crossings between the U.S. and Canada. And FAST, the free and secure trade program, or FAST, clears commercial shipments between the U.S., Mexico, or Canada borders. Marco Lopez is the former chief of staff of U.S. Customs and Border Protection. He joins us live now. Mr. Lopez, thank you so much for being with us. So, just for our international...
Thank you, Zane.
You're welcome. Just for our international travelers who might not be familiar with Global Entry, after this new policy kicks in by President Trump, what changes for international travelers coming into New York at the airports?
So look, this affects specifically the about 150,000 to 200,000 residents of New York that are members of Global Entry currently. If they want to reapply, or if a new person wants to apply and they are a resident of New York, they will no longer be able to do that. Of course, Zane, we know that this is nonsensical simply because it politicizes our security apparatus at Homeland Security. When we launched Global Entry in 2009, we did it so that we could identify individuals who are coming to our airports. Last year, by the way, 135 million air passengers crossed into America's airports. And so it makes that process a lot more difficult. And it's really doesn't make sense. Only these rules apply to New York residents because of the whim of Donald Trump and probably his advisors at the White House. It does not make air travel safe, and it only hinders our ability to screen passengers those that we know, we want to get them through our lines quicker.
Right.
And by the way, it's voluntarily, and they elect to give us information so that we know how their patterns are.
So, Marco, does it actually impact safety, this new policy, in that, given that there will inevitably be longer lines at places like JFK, it means that CBP officers can no longer spend as much time as they might need to with unknown travelers? Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right. So I think passengers will experience longer delays because now we won't have the ability to move those that we know out of the needle in the haystack, right? We're trying to identify that person that we don't know so we can spend more time talking to them and interviewing them to see if we let them into the country or not. And by the way, one of the interesting things about this is there's 13 countries that are eligible to apply for Global Entry. The UK is one. But there's 12 others aside from the UK, and all those people don't have U.S. driver's licenses. So it's just a policy that does not make sense. I don't know, somebody dreamt it up, but it really does hurt our ability to screen people. An officer at the booth has seconds to make a determination. Should I let this person in? Should I ask them additional questions? Imagine now, you're going to have to do the same process for more people. Expect longer delays.
So the president's argument would be actually, even if this makes the country slightly less safe, it is New Yorkers or the leadership in New York, the governor, etc., that has made the state far, far less safe by allowing undocumented immigrants to have driver's license. Is that at all, in your world, a fair point?
It is in no world a fair point, simply because there's no requirement for you to have a driver's license to be able to apply for Global Entry. It does not exist. And so I think that it's just an attempt to put pressure on New York leadership to try to, I don't know, give something in return for whatever the administration's asking New Yorkers for. So I don't think it's a fair point. I don't think it was thought up correctly. Again,
So what would you
having
say? What
an
would you say is
individual
the
apply
long?
for a driver's license.
What would you say would be the long-term impact, do you think, of politicizing the CBP in this country?
So look, I think that always in any department, whether it be federal, state, or local, the minute that you begin to use law enforcement for political purposes, the bad guys take advantage of that and will break through that system. And so remember, every single day, CBP, Homeland Security, has to be right 100% of the time so they can prevent a terrorist attack. And the bad guys exploit that. The bad guys just have to be right one time versus 100% of the time that CBP has to be right. And so it makes that more difficult because in between the good guys are bad guys, and not being able to separate them so that someone, I know you travel every single weekend on an airplane, so I know who you are. I should treat you differently than someone who boards a plane for the first time. I don't know anything about them, yet they're sitting in front of me. How am I going to treat them differently than I treat you that I know travel every single day? That's the danger that I think occurs when we begin to politicize law enforcement. It should not be politicized.